Dr. Jeanette Raymond here, psychologist and psychotherapist, here to talk to you about how anger and stress can make you fat even when you're not eating any more high-calorie foods than the next person. So a lot of my female clients tell me how frustrated they are, that they're gaining weight, they're already under, pressure to be good partners, spouses, parents, all sorts of different roles that they play, good at their careers, and this one thing, they're just putting on weight all the time, and they are so frustrated and ashamed that they can't manage it. There's something wrong with them. So I want to share with you some very important information about why it's not really your fault. A very important piece of research just published in the Journal of Psychoendocrinology has found that when you're under chronic stress, which means you've had it for a long time, and it's usually coming from relationships where you feel threatened and insecure and helpless and a failure and all those things, there's a certain biomarker that's released into the bloodstream, and it's called NPY. And what it does is it metabolizes the food that you eat differently to other people who are not under chronic stress. So even though you might be eating the same amount or the same calorific intake, it's processed in a way that makes you put on weight differently to other people who are consuming just the same as you are. And that's because when you're under stress, the body thinks it needs to pad itself with fat so that you'll have extra resources. And it's kind of like a camel in the desert, with the hump. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if it's going to be good times or bad times. So you have to kind of pad your adrenal glands, your organs, your heart, and everything else with fat to protect you from what you think is going to be a threat to your survival. But in our lives now, it's really about the threat that comes when our relationships are so unpredictable and unstable and make us feel insecure and threatened. When our loved ones criticize us and judge us and blame us and fight with us. When we don't feel wanted all the time. When we don't feel we're good enough. When we don't feel we're attractive enough. When we have to deal with jealousy and envy and shame and guilt and all those things, it becomes overwhelming when you're also trying to work, be a parent, be a partner, be a sibling, be a child, everything that you're trying to be. So when you're under this kind of chronic stress, you're always having to look out for what's going to hit you next, and you don't really feel empowered. You feel like you have to be defensive, and you have to make sure that you're not going to be victimized again. So what can we do about this? Well, number one, when you're eating, yes, you might be eating some high calorific foods to comfort yourself because it tastes good at the time. It's an immediate relief. Nothing wrong with that. We all do it. See if you can take the shame and guilt out of it, because it's not your fault that you're chronically stressed. Your body's going to make these biomarkers that convert the fat into weight gain, but it's because you're stressed, not because you chose to be or you're not doing anything about it. So the first thing is to remove the guilt and shame about the fact that you might be putting on weight, even though you're not eating any more than anyone else around you. Second thing, use your smartphone or tablet to just make a few notes through your day about the things that triggered you, that made you feel anxious or ashamed or guilty or afraid, uncertain, helpless, all of the things that contribute to an experience of chronic stress. You're so used to it because it's chronic, you've had it for years and years, that you don't really notice it. Your boiling point is much higher than most people's who would notice it much sooner than you. So you're needing to add that extra dimension of making conscious note of when these feelings come up, because your threshold is so much higher. Look at it in the middle of the day and look at it at the end of the day and see what those triggers were. What made you feel those things? What do they have in common? Is it a sense of disempowerment? Is it anger that you're being taken advantage of or ignored or put upon? Is it resentment that you are doing all the work and nobody else is? Is it fear that you're not going to achieve your goals and nobody's ever going to take you seriously? What is it? See what those things are. So those are the first two steps. The third step is to then look at the reality. Is it true that you're as helpless as you feel? Because that's kind of what you might have felt in the very early days of your stress when you perhaps were much younger and you don't realize how many skills you've got right now. Is it really true that you have to be on the defensive? How about using your anger and your resentment and your anxiety to become assertive and self-empowered? Because it's only those things, assertiveness, self-empowerment, and a feeling that you have a right to be cared for in a certain way, not abused or taken advantage of and so on, not put upon in order to get love. That you can begin to tackle the insecurity that makes you stressed. And you'll find more information about how to do that on my website. That would be drjeanetteraymond.com. That's my anger and stress website. And you can also go to my relationship website, which is Los Angeles westsideTherapy.com, where you will find so much more information on relationship and insecurity and how to manage it. So in the meantime, let's take away the shame. You're not doing anything wrong by eating high-calorie foods when you're under stress. It's your body's way of converting it into fat to try and protect yourself. So it's not your fault. Don't feel upset and ashamed and a failure. Secondly, monitor your moods, and when you feel anxious and guilty and triggered and helpless or insecure, and see what they have in common. And third, let's develop a plan to help you feel more self-empowered and assertive, because then the stress won't hit you, and you will then not have to deal with those biomarkers that turn everything you eat into fat. So I hope this has been useful. I'll do the next in the series talking about the self-empowerment. Let's see you then.